All right, so I get paid today and I sat down to do my budget. I do it every 2 weeks because I get paid bi-weekly. And I started to kind of close out my prior paycheck. So that's usually what I do is I add up all the final things and then I try to make sure that I didn't overspend. And in looking at this, I am noticing that I am actually in the hole. And not only am I in the hole, but I'm in the hole by about $400. So that's pretty fun. So I decided, hey, let's take this whole budgeting adventure as I budget out my next paycheck, kind of explain all my numbers, go over them, and explain my fix that I'm going to hopefully apply here to get myself out of this hole in all of its embarrassing glory. So if you want to check it out, stick around. I'm going to go through everything, all the great details.
Money mantra.
Okay, so before I go into this year's budget and my current paycheck that I'm going to budget out, I wanted to actually go back about 6 years to a year that everybody knows and loves, 2020. And I wanted to go back to this year because this is the year that I first decided that I needed to get serious about budgeting. That the reality finally slapped me in my face that I just don't know where my money is going, and I hate that because I wasn't able to do with it what I really wanted to do, and I just had no clue where it was going. And so I wanted to just point you and show you kind of the reality check that I got that finally got me to get serious about this. And I have to say, as tedious as it maybe looks, it's worth every minute that I spend on it. Like the where I've been able to take my money over the years is just absolutely insane. And yes, of course, my pay has gone up. My husband's pay has gone up over the time, but none of that would have mattered if I didn't really start being serious and considering where the money's going, what I want to do with it, and all of that good stuff. So again, it doesn't matter how much you make, it's how much you save. I will live by that forever. So I really wanted to point out this part right here, this credit card thing. And it might look like, oh, okay, sure, she was just making a credit card payment, understandable. But the thing about this is this is money that was left over on my credit card. And so it was this point where I realized how do I have $681 that's left over my credit card from the prior month from January? What did I even spend it on? Where did it come from? How did I not even realize that we spent $681 more than we had in January? And it was that realization that I came to, that I was like, I have to track this. Like I have to know what's going on and be a little bit more aware and actually delegate where my money's going to, or we're going to just be in the same boat that we're in forever. I'm going to, every month, there's going to be this credit card bill that I'm going to be trying to figure out and delegating. And I don't want to do that. So this was my wake up call. And so I really wanted to just kind of show you that. And this is also one of my first budgets. All of them are in Google Sheets. So what I do is every um, year, I just create a new Google Sheet and put the year with it. So the cool thing is I can look back over the years and kind of see how my money allocation has changed. So like I had Invisalign, I was paying off that. It looks like back in 2020, which just seems funny. The not so fun stuff is like my electric bill has gone up a lot over the years, and I'm sure everybody can relate to that. My internet has actually gone down. Groceries, oh my gosh, I'm spending way more on groceries. And by the way, in 2020, I had all three of my kids still, so we were a family of five. They were younger, so maybe not eating as much, but we also used to have Sling. Don't have that anymore. But very interesting. And so you can also notice too that as we go, to the next paycheck, and these are just mine. I used to not budget my husband's in the same detail. He would kind of take care of some of the bigger bills, and then that way I didn't have to like line by line his out as well. That has since changed, and I'll talk about that later. But we had a camper. We still have our camper, but at the time we were still paying for it, and so we had that payment. And I remember too at this point in time thinking that I needed to get rid of those types of things. As you see, my paycheck was not much. This is bi-weekly. And so there wasn't much wiggle room here to do other things, right? So these are all, we had daycare, the kids were in daycare at the time, paying for a camper, again, paying for my Invisalign. I always had a miscellaneous category because just random stuff pops up. You need to have a little bit of a buffer. If you don't have one in your budget right now, put one in there because it's silly to think that things aren't going to pop up. Groceries, oil for heating the house, and then gas for our vehicles. At the end of all that, I do have $80 here. Um, but that's not much. That's not much extra to like get creative with. Or if you notice, there's no investing in here, there's no savings, like nothing that is going to get us ahead as a family. Okay, so let's fast forward to 2026. So here is my first paycheck of the month. What I do when I budget, I always go to that first. I add up stuff. So I actually am a little old school in that as I kind of put things on my credit card, I write it down on a piece of paper and I have it right here. Here's my piece of paper that I write down what I charge on the credit card if I'm not going to immediately just pay for it in the moment. So I might go a whole week without getting into my budget spreadsheet. I don't want it to be something that runs my life, but I do go back to it to kind of keep track of everything. And so I will jot it down here when I kind of work through my credit card bill, and it's just how I work. You could also easily just open up a new sheet, a new tab down at the bottom, and have that be that place, and you type it in there, and then you work from that as you're filling in your budget, or you could just go directly in here and take care of it that way. So what I will do is I'll go through that sheet and then I fill everything, the rest of the stuff in for that given paycheck, and then I see where I'm at. And if you notice, here's where the issue is. I went over by $388, and that really sucks. And that kind of brings me back to the 2020 thing that I was pointing out, in that it makes me feel like I'm kind of failing at this, and then I may be regressing back into old habits. And of course, after 6 years of like working really hard on this budget, that's the last thing I want to do. And I'm not gonna lie, this is not the first time that I've gone over. But what I'm trying to do now is, instead of getting really upset with myself and feeling like, okay, budget's gone, blown, I'm just giving up from here on out, is I try to correct and remedy those situations and then move on from them. And that keeps me on track. Okay, so this wasn't perfect, but you know what? The next one's going to be. And I'm going to come up with a plan to fix this. So if you look, I also, so the reason this section, my spending money, isn't bolded is because I didn't spend it all. So what's interesting enough is I do actually kind of have some money in there. It's just that when I consider what I've spent in some other categories, that kind of gets eaten up by that. And so that spending money is my personal money. So what I do is every paycheck I get $100, and my husband gets the same thing. We have $100 that we just give ourselves as an allowance. And you might think that's silly, and you might be like, really? You work, you shouldn't have to have an allowance. But by giving myself kind of a set amount of money that I can just guilt free spend on whatever I want, it actually feels more freeing than just kind of casually spending money and then having to come up with that money later. So it works. It works really well. And I know here I am showing you that I'm $400 in the hole, but I'm telling you, it works in general for kind of controlling our spending a little bit and keeping it reasonable. And if I don't spend it, and that's what I wanted to show you, I will take that extra money, that about 40-ish dollars there, and I will put that in my savings account. So even though I'm in the hole down here overall for the paycheck, I'm going to still delegate that money to myself, because, and I'm looking at you, to all the moms here, you deserve stuff too. And I know it's so hard to spend your money on yourself, like it really is. And some of the overflow is from stuff for my kids, if I'm being honest. But you've got to still put yourself first in some places and keep that money. Don't, like, I've had a hard time over the years just not putting that money back into, covering the extra stuff, right? Like saying, hey, I got $40 here. That $40 should go towards the kids' activities or whatever it is that put me over. No, I'm going to try to still delegate that to myself and keep that to myself, because, I did earn it and I didn't end up spending it. And I'm just going to do that, and I'll try to figure the rest of it out. And we'll see how it works. That's again why I wanted to tape this. Maybe hopefully you get something out of it. So one of the things I do is I go to my old paycheck. After I've added it all in, I unbold it so that I know that I'm done with this paycheck. And then I'm going to go down to this paycheck. And so this is my paycheck for this uh, paycheck. So we're going to go in here. Here's what it is. Like I said, I get paid bi-weekly. This is what my contract is. So gone up about quite a bit since 2020. And now we're going to go through and just dedicate and allocate all these funds and come up with a plan for that $388 hole there, that $400 hole. So groceries, I did do grocery order yesterday. And so I love to do Walmart pickup orders. It saves me a lot of money. I've noticed that if I'm not in the store, whether I'm hungry or not, I'm not seeing extra things and grabbing them. I can make a meal plan, and I'll be happy to show that maybe in a different video. The meal plan that I use, I make the meal plan for the next week. I've tried to do 2 weeks at once, just doesn't work. It's too much. But I'll do the whole week and then I go through, grab the ingredients out of it, and then I create my Walmart order right there. I love it too because I can go and be like, do I have peanut butter? And I can just run right into my kitchen, see that I have peanut butter or that I don't, add that on the list too. And so I'm not unnecessarily buying a bunch of extra materials and ingredients that I don't necessarily need. Um, but yeah, found it's been a real cost savings. I spent, I'm gonna say $300 in groceries, and the reason I'm kind of, that's a nice whole round number, is because I also had some miscellaneous things in there. So I had to get like laundry pods, toilet paper, a few things like that. And so this total was actually more like 349.62, I believe was the actual total. The 49.62 is going to get taken out of my miscellaneous category, and that is something my husband's paycheck is covering. So you're not going to see it in here. But that is why this is a nice round number, because you're probably thinking, I never go to the grocery store and get a nice round number. And no, I didn't, but that extra money is going to be covered in the miscellaneous for those types of things. My next column here is eating out. So one of the things that I finally got smart about over time, and you'll notice that this was not in my budget back in 2020, and if I showed you even just like 2 years ago, this would not be there. One, I didn't have the extra money for it, but two, um, I was ignoring it. I was pretending that we weren't eating out ever, and the thing that happened as a result of that is that I blew my budget every time. Every paycheck, there was $100, $200 or whatever it was of just us. It could have been something as simple as McDonald's, or it could have been going out to a restaurant and sitting down as a family, and it wasn't working. So I finally was like, you know what, we're not going to not eat out. So how about, instead of pretending this thing isn't going to happen, let's give it an actual set amount. And what's interesting is we actually started spending less. It's like, for whatever reason, one thing I've found is that when you actually say, hey, I'm going to allow myself to spend X amount of dollars on this thing, you end up spending less than it for whatever reason. And I don't know. I mean, and again, you'll see the category that I went over in, and that wasn't true in that category, but I found for the most part, we don't use this whole thing. And that's just seems kind of funny to me. But, anyways, that's going to be blank because the paycheck cycle has just started. So I will fill that in as we maybe go out to eat at some point in time. This next one is kids' investments. So all three of my kids have 529 plans. And if you'd like to see a video on like the details about 529 plans, love to make one for you. Let me know in the comments. But they all each have a 529 plan. And so one of the things I did was my research on it. And for my state, which is Maine, they allow a certain number of matching grants. And so I did my research, figured out what I had to exactly do as far as contribution amount, whether it had to be an automatic contribution or not, and figured out how much I needed to put in so that they could get the max amount of contributions given by the state. And so, what it is in our state is that if you contribute at least $1,000 a year for your kid, and that $25, at least $25 is automatically contributed for 6 months in a row, then you can get a $300 matching grant, which is pretty cool. So that's kind of how I decided how much money I would put into their 529 plans. And the rules have gotten so flexible and awesome with what you could use 529 plan money for. So as far as being concerned, like, hey, well, what happens if your kids don't go to college? Well, you can actually put that money into Roth IRAs now, later when they're older, if they don't end up using it. I think if you can just get started and you want to set a little bit of money aside for your kids, 529s are a great place to do that. But also, where are you in your budgeting life? Because you also need to be looking at your retirement first. Like, I'm a strong believer that you need to take care of yourself first. And so, anyways, $180 will be going to their 529 plans, and that is what that is right there. Next is another category that I ignored for a very long time, similar to the eating out, and where I planned, I just pretended, hey, we're good, it's fine, we can just squeeze this in somewhere. And actually, I'll tell you where I used to squeeze fun and eating out. I used to try to put them both in my miscellaneous category. When, interestingly enough, when I designed that category at first, it was meant to cover those miscellaneous things. Like I said, if we go to a birthday party, that's going to cover the birthday present we're buying for the kid. Um, did I buy toilet paper? That's coming out of my miscellaneous, stuff like that. It was never meant to cover eating out and fun. but that's where I'd always take it from, and then I wouldn't have enough to cover the actual miscellaneous costs, and then like I said, I kept going over each paycheck, and it was super frustrating. So I finally just smartened up and made it its own category. $100 has seemed to be working so far, but like you should always be aware of and be doing when you're making a budget is be flexible, change, like start with an amount. $100 is usually my go-to. You can probably see a lot of these categories have $100. And then as life goes on, I will adjust if need be. So $100 to fund. This one's going to stay empty too for now because we have nothing specifically planned. But we will do that. And by the way, this fund usually means kind of smaller stuff. So like if we decided to go to like the children's museum, this would pay the admission for that. If we went and got ice creams, I would take the money out of here. That type of stuff. Not vacations. I actually have a whole separate line item that I use for vacation money. We're not putting any money towards vacations in this particular paycheck. But if you sneak right over here above my face here, you can actually see where my next paycheck, that is, there is some money allotted for that there. So the next thing is investments. So I love that saying, pay yourself first. Pay yourself first. All right. So this $1,000 is going to go into my taxable brokerage account. And it might seem crazy that I have one of those, but for me, freedom and flexibility is a huge thing. So I created a taxable brokerage account so that I could have a bridge to maybe ending my 9 to 5 if I decided to, but I wanted that ability to kind of get a hold of that money pretty readily and pretty easily if I needed to. So $1,000 to that, and that might seem like a lot, and you might be like, yeah, no way. Again, you saw my 2020 budget. There was no investing in that. It's something that you will slowly build up to, and again, it's such an awesome feeling that you get to hold on to this money. Like that's mine now that we get to do what we want with. And my husband and I decided that this is something that's important to us, investing, and so it feels good to actually be able to put that amount there. But again, it did not start there, and it grew very, very slowly over time, and we got there. You can too, trust me, like we can do this. The next one is savings. And so I don't have as big of an emergency fund as I would like to say that I have. I know general rule of thumb is usually 3 to 6 months of expenses. I have 2 months, I think, of expenses. So that means I need, yeah, just shy of 2 months of expenses. $800 towards savings, trying to build up my emergency fund. We're going to keep that there. And slowly but surely, we're going to get there. So I'm excited about that. I also keep my savings, just so you know, in a high yield savings account. Please open one of those up. If you're going to hold on to cash liquid, which you should have some, right? Everybody should. Uh, you want to have it in a high yield savings account, at least make a little bit more in interest, keep up with inflation if you can. I love Ally. I have a affiliate link in the description if you'd like to check them out. I get a little bit of money, you get a little money if you open up the account. If you don't want to, that's fine, not a big deal. But I love Ally. It has these buckets that you can use, and in those buckets you can have little tiny sinking funds, if you will. So that's where I have all my little where I'm saving for like kids' activities, for vacations, all that different stuff. And I have that one account, but I can see all the different stuff, and it's amazing. I love it, and it's making I think it's 3.6% right now versus the 0.01 that I'm going to get with my regular bank that I have. So that's definitely where your emergency fund should go, somewhere where it can make you a little bit more money, but is still liquid and can get taken out at any moment should you need it. And then next is that spending money category. So as I mentioned, I delegate $100 to myself. um, every paycheck that I get to spend however I want to. If I want me money and it's for myself, I'll pull it out of that. And as I mentioned before, if I don't spend it all, I put it in my savings account, and then that kind of builds up. So if there eventually is a really big thing that I want to have, I'm working towards that. And so this was a hard shift too, like to actually be honest and say, hey, like I do, like I work for this money. This is me. I should deserve to spend it any way that I want without even my husband saying anything about it. And so on the flip side, he as well also, my husband has his own spending amount, and you might be looking and saying, well, how come his is less than yours? I'll be honest, I messed up a little bit for some reason with this the last paycheck there, and yeah, I think I spent his last little tiny bit. There was a little mistake, and I think I added it to our miscellaneous category. Um, and thought I just had some extra money at the end of the day, and I did not. So his is just a tiny bit shy, but that's okay. I got a little bit of money that I've set aside for him otherwise, and so I'm just going to use that to buffer that for this paycheck. And then um, next time he's going to get his $100, so he'll be good. Trust me. But if you notice down here, um, I've allocated every single dollar. If there's another mistake that I've learned over the years of budgeting, it's that you don't want to leave like too much money down here that's free and not like accounted for in some way, because I'm telling you, it will slide out of your hands so fast and you will have no clue where it went. So remember though my issues. So I added up. These are the issues. These are the things that I overspent on. I had 82.78 at Lowe's. We are building a vegetable garden, so that's what this Lowe's amount is. And then if you skip down here, this $105 to a landscaping company, also for this garden that we're building. So I knew that we were spending money on the garden, and there's a couple more charges associated with it, but those I was able to cover already. I just didn't realize we'd spent as much as we had. Like we were just swiping, building the garden, having fun. It was great until I added the numbers all up, and then it got sad. This other one is for travel soccer for my kids. I didn't expect to have to deal with that for another month. So yeah, I've got $200 towards soccer. So here is the total. 388.28. So the categories that I kind of went over in is going to be my home. I did not budget enough for that, and my kids' activities. So these are two things that I do have sinking funds for, uh, but they're a little bit low right now. So I'm going to need to cover these otherwise, because if I kind of let them sit there, it's going to be a problem. So I think what I'm going to have to do, and it's going to hurt, but I think I'm going to need to lower my savings this month. And so since I haven't actually shifted this money over yet, I'm going to have to lower this. And I think what I'll do, let's say I'm over by, what did I say? 388.28. I think I'm going to need to lower this by at least $300. So I'm going to make that 500. And then we're going to do 300 here. We're going to call that home. So I don't always, contribute to everything every paycheck. So you'll notice there's no home seeking fund in this paycheck, but over here I did have, let me scroll that up a little bit. Over in my other paycheck, I did actually um, make a little sinking fund for it and contributed $150. But as you can see, I spent way more than that. Got a little too happy with the old garden. So now we got to pay for it. So there it is. So that's going to cover 300. And as I mentioned, I'm in the hole 388.28. So the 88.28, I'm going to take out of my kids' sinking fund. I do have 88.28 in there. I don't have 200. So I'm going to go to my kids' sinking fund and I'm going to take care of that. But at least this will cover the majority of it and keep me somewhat on budget. I'm going to be saving a little less than I originally wanted to, but at least we're getting somewhere. I'm still saving some, and that makes me feel good. Not going to have a bunch of money sitting on a credit card, and then I will go to my Ally account and I'm going to pull out that other $88 out of my kids' activity sinking fund, and we're going to cover that. So thankfully, the setting aside money consistently, even though like the kids didn't have any activities they were doing. I think at the last paycheck, I didn't have to spend any money on anything. So by still putting that aside and not just being like, oh, I have extra money now, that has now saved me. So hopefully, something that you took away from this whole kind of budgeting experience that I just showed you is that first of all, you don't have to be perfect, and don't throw everything out just because you might not be. Second, I hope you realize that things are going to change. So saving so much money towards groceries one month is not going to necessarily work the next. Like you can do it. And again, how involved and how much time it takes is really your personal preference. Hopefully you found this helpful. I have some other videos where I talk about some of those kind of tricky things that seem to keep popping up and that throw budgets off. Check those out. And again, I have a video actually about high yield savings accounts. So if you are interested in opening one of those, it goes through the process of how to do it. And I do have that affiliate link for Ally down below if you would like to just click on there and just open an account and get it going. Put $10 in it, do whatever you got to do. But all that good stuff. But there's help out there. Let me know again in the comments. Is there a particular video? Is there something you're wondering about? Was this helpful? Would you like to see me budget out my next paycheck because the categories all change, and all that good stuff. So, all right, see you in the next one.